And welcome back to Your Voice, Your Future. I'm your moderator, Armstrong Williams. Joining us later in the program tonight is presidential candidate Marianne Williamson, who has decided to re-enter the presidential race after doing so well in Michigan, California, Arkansas, and other places. In fact, she's the top vote getter, second only to Joe Biden. She hasn't won any delegates yet, but she seems to be doing very well. We're going to ask her why voters are resonating with her and why she decided to re-enter the race. But up now, we have Marcia Dyson, who is joining us. Marcia, welcome to the show. You know, it is Women's History Month, and I want to talk to you about Women's History Month, but I can't tell you the shock and the disgust when I watch what's going on in Haiti, which was once a tropical paradise. And from Clinton's policies to the Clinton Foundation, and they should not be given a pass for what they've done to contribute to the chaos that continues in Haiti, to former President Moïse being assassinated, and now his wife is considered one of the conspirators, and she laid in bed next to him and got shot, knowing she set up the whole regime, allies to her, to come in and just kill her husband in such an just a murderous way. And now you have the gangs who are allowing thousands of gang members back out on the street, led by Barbecue, a former police officer. And there's video of him and his cannibalism, eating human beings. Mm-hmm. Americans are barely being able to evacuate and escape the chaos there. People are running for their lives. It's just pandemonium. I mean, it's so tragic.
It is tragic, Armstrong, especially for me. I spent over 7 years in and out of Haiti, pre and after the earthquake. In fact, I was appointed the cultural ambassador by the former Prime Minister of Haiti, Prime Minister Michel Pierre-Louis Duvalier. And I also worked for the Clinton Foundation for the rehabilitation of Haiti, and subsequently left that to work with the Haitians' grassroots organizations themselves, especially after the earthquake. And that whole initiative about the rehabilitation of Haiti after the earthquake was to not only rebuild Haiti, but to European and American standards. I also had the opportunity to work with the women who are running for government. We actually created a quota where women had to be representative in that particular parliament. And I worked with the nonprofits and worked with getting medical supplies there and trying to increase the education for the students in the universities whose schools had failed during that time, and actually took them on to be the host committee for the rehabilitation of Haiti under President Clinton. And they actually had to correct some of the work from one of the greatest research agencies, the McKinley Group, with French and all of that. So when I'm seeing what's happening now and watching him, first, the red flag was the assassination of the former president, was a red flag for me. Haiti then became a failed state. I interacted with Haiti under Preval and Martellet. I was in Haiti also during the cholera breakout, and that's another story. But for this issue, to see the barbarity that is happening, and to see and I hate to use the word animalistic things that are happening there, is painful, but certain things evolved in that country for centuries, right? And when you don't have the leadership, or you have co-opted leadership, or you don't resonate with the people, there was a great economic divide in Haiti as well. In fact, one of the things that I tried to do was to sort of suture the relationship between the bourgeois Haitians, the light-skinned Haitians, with the people in the street. That was a very Herculean effort. So when you have the assassination of a president and you have these gang formations coming in, I mean, they make Chicago look tame, I hate to say it. And then you see, like you talked about, the cannibalism. That is not only brutality, it's also, and it's not, I can't even co-opt and say that it's a desperation, but it shows what happens when people are left to themselves, when you don't have good governance, and when you leave them with extreme hope. They were undermined by so many outside forces, having to pay France back for being victorious over slavery. But that still doesn't excuse a citizenry gone wild. So now we have our U.S. forces over there, as you said, trying to extrapolate our citizens and the diplomats that are over there out of the country, and that's a Herculean feat because people who have not been to Haiti, it's mountainous, the roads, it's crumbling, you don't know where they're hiding and who is for such. I have a great lamentation over that, what is happening there.
How do we get, has there ever been a time where they've enjoyed peace and some solidarity, where the government actually function? It seems as though Haiti has always been on the coast of just exploding like it is now.
Do you know when Haiti operated the best? Under the dictatorship of Papa Doc. In fact, it was called the French Riviera. It's where the movie stars would come, and they would, Catherine Dunham, who was from my hometown of Chicago, who had a PhD in sociology and dance ethnography, would go there. In fact, she had a villa called the Habitation Park. And all the stars, and even President Clinton and Hillary had their honeymoon there, or they came there. And it was that. The promenade was beautiful. The roads were beautiful. It's just as if you were in the southern France. But after him, I can't remember what president came after him, then it started to fall. Because we also, in our geopolitics, had our favorites as well. There was Aristide, right? And Aristide had to leave the country, and he went to Africa. Then after Baby Doc also had to leave, there was not a time in Haitian history where the presidents at any point in time could actually live in that island republic after their presidency. There was one time which that happened, and I took Howard universities during that time, and they met them. Baby Doc, Aristide, and that particular time, Marcia was the first time in Haitian history that 3 presidents could live on that same island without them fighting one another. But what's wrong with Haiti is what I say when I look at our own governance, what I say when I go look at the poverty on the continent of Africa and the various countries, in which I tell leadership the real thing has impoverished is our leadership and our loyalty to our citizenry, so they do not get to that degree of denigration of one's humanity. I mean, it makes, like I said, my hometown of Chicago, which we call now the wild, wild Midwest, or what we see the increase in crime, regardless of what people are saying, when you have 256 cars broken into at the Capitol Arena during an event, and homeless people in that. So we're on a fray of, the flag is not only frayed, but our society is coming frayed, and Haiti is the worst a representation of that, but at the same time, you have to go back, like with us as African Americans and the trajectory, or anybody else who've been oppressed. How did they go from this situation to be really in the bowels of the devil, without any excuses?
Help us understand the cannibalism.
That's a lack of appreciation for one's humanity, and it rears its head in different forms.
It doesn't seem like it's something new, though.
No. You know, there are cliques, or not cliques, but there are some societies into which that might have been performative within that Haitian society. In my 7 years, I never heard of it. No one ever spoke about it. And I went to visit the head of the voodoo, you know, when I went to Haiti, because as a minister, I wanted to see what was influencing the people and how to resonate with the people based upon their underground religion. And I don't call it underground religion, but because of Catholicism, they could not keep the traditional religion, which they brought over on the slave ship with them, right? It's the same thing as Santeria in Cuba, or Candomblé in Brazil. But again, we can't look at what is happening with the cannibalism and make it monolithic, all Haitians, just no more than we can say that the brother who is shooting a brother or stealing or raping women that come from our tribe are the representation of all of us. But to me, the stem comes from not being able to govern the country, the abuse that they got from their former slave owners, right? And the continued geopolitics that undermine it, mostly for resources that people do not know that Haiti has under that island.
You know, it also shows how far U.S. stability efforts must go.
Yes, well, after the earthquake, they were promised $1.4 billion. They never saw that. And people say, well, you can't give it to them because of the corruption. Well, I beg to differ, and I wrote an article about it. There were wild grassroots organizations, there were individuals who helped to rebuild Haiti before the initiative to do so under President Clinton. We were having meetings at a building that was at a hotel owned by a Haitian that was destroyed, built back to the American and European standards.
You're getting into the Global Fragility Act now. A lot of people feel that it cannot be implemented, but some say if it's implemented properly, it can work.
If you engage the people, in order to engage them, it's not being didactic to them. It's actually, which my job was, to help them rehabilitate their country so you could have a sense of pride. You know how we like to say, we built the White House, that's why we should be in the White House, because you touch on a cornerstone of what you feel democracy is, and you're engaged in it. But when it goes south, when it sinks, as it has done at this failed state in Haiti, then you are removed from the ideal, just like a lot of our kids are absence of the history. Well, when the universities close and the schools are closed, and they too are disconnected from that pride. And even though we might think that some dictators or all dictators are bad, it ironically worked best under Papa Doc. And
why?
Everybody was pride. Well, because remember, when you colonize or you're in slavery, we are run amok. We do, right? And so I think as a bad father, but who was more disciplined with them, the people were engaged. And so it's either or, it wasn't an either or, but it was a kind of a both and, that you knew that you had the civility. People would come there from around the world. They felt safe being there.
Are you saying that you need a mixture of both?
Well,
a mixture of both to make it work now?
Not necessarily, but for the Island Republic, given their history, it did work under Papa Doc more than it has done under any other president.
You're saying you need a strong arm leadership there.
You need, if you're going to go amok, not a strong arm, but you need an engaging arm. Now, subsequently after Papa Doc, I think that the possibility of having a true democratic republic could have happened on the island, but then too, foreign entities come in and they undermine that. Because at a certain point, when you want certain resources...
But the country has been raped.
It has been raped.
And the citizenry realizes it.
Well, so you have a woundedness. It's like a woman. When you ask, why is this woman acting bizarre? Why is this woman not taking care of her children? Why is this woman on the street? Because it's somewhat, I would put it, since it's Women's History Month, it's spousal abuse. It really is. When you've been battered and beaten down so much, and your children have been beaten and down so that you really gravitate to your lower sense of, they said, the
lowest common denominator.
The denominator and your lesser angels. And it's very, like I said, it's very complex, but we can have some of those similars, but not as bad, even in our own country, right? And the way in which we cannibalize one another. It seems to be more formalized or more polite, but in the ways we're facing cannibalism, the way we bite after each other, the way we counsel one another, but never to the extreme.
We're not biting flesh.
No, but we're not feasting on it.
No, we're not feasting.
So you know what? You know what? This is the time of Ramadan for a lot of individuals. A lot of people are praying regardless of the faith. I'm praying for this whole world. I'm praying for Haiti. I'm praying that some help for the people there who are not engaged in this acidic gain formation and the brutality that they're putting on their other people.
I know you're gonna, I gotta say this, it's probably the cruelest place on planet Earth right now. And I'm Armstrong Williams, and when we come back, Marianne Williams will join the conversation. Don't go away. It's hard. Here we go. And welcome back to the broadcast. Everyone knows the name of Marianne Williamson, a best-selling author, advice guru, and we've tried for the last several months to have her on our show, and it worked out. She's joining us tonight. Ms. Williamson, welcome to our broadcast house.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
And thank you for having the courage to run for president. It's expensive, it's exhausting, You have little or no control over your life. And I've always say anybody that makes the commitment to run for president, to offer voters an alternative that's deserving of the highest respect and honor, because that to me is the ultimate sacrifice.
Thank you. I sort of have to agree with you at this point. So your congratulations received with gratitude.
You know, in the context of your recent decision to re-enter the presidential race, could you discuss the main motivations and goals that influenced your decisions to once again seek the Democratic nomination for president of the United States? And how do you believe your campaign can impact the current political climate that we find ourselves in?
After the first three primary states, it was clear that my numbers were so low that there was no way I would be able to, close the delegate gap and really be any kind of a contender for the nomination. And for that reason, I suspended my campaign. But it didn't take me too long to realize that something bigger than the horse game is at stake here. The DNC had decided that there would be no primary. At the very beginning, the DNC had said that they saw their job as simply helping Joe Biden be renominated. They felt that the threat to democracy represented by Donald Trump was so great that they felt it was their responsibility and that they were entitled to basically make it very difficult, if not impossible, for anyone else to have a say in this campaign season. And then that's what happened. And I found myself blocked in various ways, kicked off ballots, blacklisted on CNN and MSNBC, et cetera. So I saw how the system is rigged. I saw how the game is played. After I suspended, because given the circumstances, are you not hearing me or something?
Oh, no, I'm hearing you well. I'm sorry, I hear you well. Please continue.
Yeah. So after experiencing that and then coming in so low in the in those first three states, I suspended and then realized something bigger than the horse race is at stake here. The conversation is what's important. I'm having a conversation with the American people that the president is not having and that Trump is not having. 39% of Americans now report that they're regularly skipping meals in order to pay their rent. Half of the renters in the United States cannot afford their rent. One in four Americans are living with medical debt. We have 1.3 million Americans who are rationing their insulin. 70% of Americans say that they live with chronic economic anxiety. The majority of Americans unable to absorb a $1,000 expenditure and are living paycheck to paycheck. There is ubiquitous economic despair in this country. And all that the system is offering is a little tweak here and a little tweak there. We need fundamental economic reform. And I don't feel that that conversation should end simply because the system makes sure that anybody who even gets that deep and gets real doesn't have a chance at the conversation. So I'm staying in, and with every vote that I get, there is a greater opportunity, greater chance that I will be able to influence the platform, influence the president, influence the convention, and so forth.
The things that you've mentioned that the American people suffer from and are not getting the leadership that is necessary, you don't find all those answers in the current president of the United States, Joe Biden? He can't address those things. Do you feel the part of the reason why you are running is because you think that Joe Biden has also failed the American people in many ways as the titular head of the Democratic Party?
Well, first of all, let's talk about the larger context. Let's not leave out Donald Trump. There have been people who've said to me from the beginning, why are you doing this? Don't you realize the fascists are at the door? I'm doing this because the fascists are at the door. We are not going to beat Donald Trump unless we offer a lot more than the same old, let's finish the job. We need, for instance, Medicare for all. We have 68,000 Americans who die every year because of lack of health care. We have 75 to 90 million Americans who are either underinsured or uninsured. We have millions of Americans whose health insurance will cover their visit to the doctor, but it won't cover the tests that the doctor wants them to have. It won't cover the operation the doctor thinks they need. And for 18 million Americans, it won't cover the prescription drugs that the doctor prescribes. So this president has said that he would veto a Medicare for all bill. And yet a Medicare for all bill is what we need. Now, a majority of Republicans as well as Democrats say that they want that. It is considered a moderate position. Every other advanced democracy has it. These are the kinds of things that we need in order to defeat Donald Trump. So no, President Biden is talking about how over the next 10 years we're lowering prescription drug prices. No, that's not enough. We need Medicare for all. The president has talked about the $35 cap on insulin for people over 65. Well, first of all, we have a lot of people with diabetes in this country who are under 65. And in any other advanced democracy, insulin would be free because of universal health care. So this is an example. The president is the corporatist democratic agenda, which definitely seeks to ameliorate the stress of people who are living within an unjust economy. I want to end the injustice.
So what are your thoughts on the border crisis, which seems to be the most important issue to the American people, the crisis at our borders?
Well, on that, I would have to agree with President Biden. There was a bipartisan bill. It had everything the Republicans said that they wanted. It was a compromise. It was something like $8.5 billion. It would give us the infrastructure that we need down there, the agents, the people who know how to interrogate. Is there an establishment of credible fear? Moving people on to the next stage. Otherwise, making sure that people need to go home to their native countries, et cetera. That's what we need down there. And we were going to have it. The bill was made. It would give the president all of the power, including the power to close the border if he wanted to at any point. And instead, it was Donald Trump who came in. Donald Trump who came in and said to the same Republican leaders who had helped write the bill not to pass it, to kill it. Why? Because he knew it would work. And he knew that in its working, that would give President Biden and the Democrats in general a win during an election year, and he didn't want it.
You know, running for president of the United States is a numbers game. How do you get to the delegates? And I'm not sure if that's really your goal, because I think you're saying something more important, that you want to bring attention to issues that nobody's talking about that impact the daily lives of everyday Americans, the insulin, the health care. But how do you, is that your goal? Or do you think your goal is to have a pathway to winning the nomination for the Democratic Party?
If I had been treated fairly, I would have had that pathway. Remember, the DNC was overt about the fact that they saw their job as helping the president get the nomination, which, as we know, is not the traditional role of the political party. The role of the political party is to stand in the background until the people have decided. But the situation was created in which it was very difficult for me to get my message to the people. I was blacklisted on CNN this year. I was blacklisted on MSNBC. No Democratic candidate can get anywhere when the media platforms that most Democrats watch don't even showcase you. Never on one of the Sunday morning programs. Now, last time when I ran, I was. And last time when I ran, I was given a CNN town hall. It was very deliberate strategy why they did not do that. The smears, the lies, the infiltration of my campaign, the kicking me off ballots. So absolutely, I feel that if I had been treated fairly, as any American citizen qualified for the job should be, I absolutely believe I could have been a contender. Given the situation now, it would take a miracle, but at this point, I will take whatever I can get that will enable me to contribute to what is happening in this country. I believe that the issues I'm talking about are absolutely important, and as I said to you before, any vote I get increases the possibility that it will influence the platform and possibly the president's agenda, or whomever is the nominee.
Do you see President Biden having to stay in power to last this election? Would you prefer having a debate with our sitting president?
I have been asking for a debate, as Dean Phillips asked for a debate. It is absurd we didn't have a debate. The DNC came up with this narrative, and it's nothing more than a PR concoction, that you don't primary an incumbent president. Now, I am old enough to remember when Lyndon Johnson was the incumbent president and Eugene McCarthy primaried him. Bobby Kennedy Sr. primaried him. Nobody thought that was weird. It was called democracy. And it was also a very important primary because it led to the end of the Vietnam War. So this idea that nobody primaries an incumbent president was absolutely undemocratic. Candidate suppression is a form of voter suppression. Absolutely. And I've been calling for the last year for the president to debate me. And if the president wouldn't even debate me, how's he going to do in a debate with Donald Trump?
What about his staying power? What about his health? What about his vice president Kamala Harris? Do any of these things concern you?
Of course they concern me, and I think more importantly, it concerns a majority of Americans. They've made that clear in poll after poll. The majority of Americans are concerned about the president's age, and apparently the Democratic establishment elite thinks that they can just close their eyes and cross their fingers and just will their way into a victory. This is very disturbing. Americans are disturbed by this, and the vice president is not popular either. So, and also the polls showed recently the president is not doing well against Trump in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Arizona, important swing states. And the Democratic establishment is in complete denial here. And they put the Democratic electorate into a kind of trance-like state. We have to go with Joe. We have to go with Joe. No, that's not how democracy works. A lot of people should have run who felt like running. There should have been a robust debate, and that's how the candidate should have been chosen. We should not be anointing someone. That's not how democracy is supposed to work.
You know, what's fascinating is that former President Donald Trump, with all his indictments, his legal woes, his polls across the board shows him not just neck to neck with the sitting president, but that he's beating him in many of the polls. What do you attribute this to? What are the voters saying in this election?
Historians will be writing about this for decades. The psychological makeup of the American mind. I think what we have to deal with is the situation at hand. And the situation at hand is the following. People who love Donald Trump love Donald Trump. We can sit here and analyze about why they love Donald Trump, but they love Donald Trump, and they have a right to love him, and they have a right to vote for him. We could indict him 91 more times. They'll still vote for him. We could put him in prison. They'd still vote for him. That's not where the electoral risk lies for those of us who do not wish to see the former president return to the White House. The electoral risk for us is people staying home. And that's, again, why I'm in this race, because the agenda that is currently being submitted to the American people on behalf of the Democrats is not exciting enough. It does not meet Donald Trump at the level in which he needs to be met. There's a lot of, but the president has done so much. Well, he's done, I'm certainly willing and eager to give him credit where credit is due. But the truth of the matter is that his economic policies have not made a difference in the visceral experience of the majority of Americans. Americans are drowning in this country. We're drowning. I'm not. I'm in on that top 20% of earners. If you're among the top 20% of earners in the United States, then you're doing well, and that's to be celebrated. But it's like you're on an island surrounded by a vast sea of economic despair. The way our capitalist system is working right now, it is predicated on a permanent underclass. And that kind of ubiquitous pain and stress and anxiety, then we call it a mental health crisis. But there's no way to overstate the role of economic inequality in creating all that mental stress.
Marianne Williamson is joining us. She's a candidate for president as a Democratic candidate. She's joining us, and Marcia Dyson is also in the studio. We'll come back with both our guests on this, Your Voice, Your Future.
It is easier to build up strong children than to try and repair broken men.
The streets are plagued with crime, violence. There's a lot of poverty, and it's all a result of lack of education that's happening in our schools. So it really is a crisis.
We come from very different political perspectives, but we've come to the same conclusion. And that is, there is a crisis in the classroom. Children are being deprived of quality of life because they're being deprived of a good education. We must solve this problem. It's incumbent upon all of us to join hands together to get this done.
We can't afford to wait one more day before we address these issues, because every day we lose another child.
Let's stop the politicking. Let's stop the games. Let's really do something to give these kids a real chance at life and being a part of that American dream.
We need accountability for funding. Many of the districts where you're seeing very low test scores, students graduating with very low literacy and math comprehension rates, they are receiving a lot of funding. So where is the money going where our kids aren't being adequately educated?
If you believe every child is deserving of a quality education, please go to educationjusticefoundation.com. Marianne Williamson is a Democratic candidate for President of the United States. You know, many people are disturbed that Trump and Biden are the presumptive nominees of the party. Could Robert Kennedy Jr. be a game changer in this equation, Ms. Williamson?
Absolutely, he could. I think that the American people are disgusted by this. We've been saying in poll after poll after poll, they didn't want to see another Trump Biden rematch. The primary elections, as they've unfolded already, are historically low numbers of voters. People are not inspired by this. And I think people are more ready to sort of take on what's called a corporate duopoly than they've been since Ross Perot. So I think both the Democratic and the Republican establishments are kidding themselves if they think that Robert Kennedy doesn't stand a chance to be a serious factor. You mentioned this, and I must ask you this because it hits very close home to me. We are the fourth estate. We are the media. I believe, as a broadcast owner and the moderator of Your Voice, Your Future, that your voice is a very important voice to be heard. I don't understand when the fourth estate supposedly holds the three branches of government accountable and responsible, and they provide platforms for all voices to give the American people a better chance at a buffet of voices that represents their interests. It seems as though that the media, if they're blackballing you to CNNs, the MSNBCs, and other networks, it seems as though they're not doing the bidding of the fourth estate, but they're doing the bidding of the two-party system. Well, unfortunately, the two parties are part of the corporate state at this point. It's a corporate interest. The president has $1 billion at his command. Remember, the Democratic Party does more to serve the guys who really run it have to do with private equity firms, Wall Street, Silicon Valley. Because in policy after policy after policy, we have legislators who do more to serve the short-term profit maximization goals of their corporate donors than to serve their own constituents and the safety, health, and well-being of the American people. Now, the Republican Party is much, much worse, but the bar is so low at this point that we've got to stop excusing the Democratic Party just because it's better than the Republicans. We have to take on the fact that Washington itself has become a system of legalized bribery. Now, when you talk about, and I know I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, the Telecommunications Act in 1996 allowed for the conglomeratization of these media companies. When I was a child, you didn't even have an expression mainstream media. And when I was a child, there was a law that the same company could not own the radio station and the television station and the newspaper because it was codified by law that the American people were guaranteed a variety and a diversification of information. Now it is absolutely controlled. When you have something like, in my case, an FEC registered qualified presidential candidate that CNN and MSNBC say that you can't come on, that's because it's all one group, whether it's political parties, insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, big ag, big chemical companies, big food companies, oil companies, gun manufacturers, or the military-industrial complex. We are no longer even really at the deepest level trying to be a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And when Abraham Lincoln said that the men who died at Gettysburg died so that a government of the people, by the people, and for the people would not perish from the earth, it's perishing now. For all intents and purposes, we're a government of the corporations, by the corporations, and for the corporations. And the only thing that can change this is if we, the people, step in at the ballot box.
Marcia, you're listening to this, your response?
Well, first of all, Marianne Williamson, it's so good to be with you today, especially during Women's History Month, and listening to all the brilliant things that you have to say, and somewhat between the hard and the rock place between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, who to me are the same on the, different on the same coin, that you are a voice in the wilderness, and we need to hear some other opinions rather than choosing between the lesser of two evils. And you're bringing out a lot of in the conversation with Armstrong, things that you can't normally hear because there are no debates, right? And to me, that should be a red flag to every American citizen, especially in the discourse of January the 6th and who's co-op and what democracy that we may have and maintain, that you cannot come on, have a primary debate and or question the president. We've all listened to the State of the Union, and I felt like I was a child at my father's foot, being very didactic and told and sometimes yelled at, and that's okay because that is what fathers do, but you don't be abusive and just act as if everything you say is, first of all, probable, because most fathers do promise their children stuff that they never deliver, and they always tell them the same thing, I'm gonna come up with the gifts, and we don't. We do understand that that's the nature of a State of a Union address. But I wanna come to you, my sister, during Women's History Month. First of all, I've known you for decades. I fell in love with you coming to your church in Wayne, Michigan. And also when we talk about the campaign, we also talk about the influence of women. And the first book that I was introduced of yours was A Woman's Worth, because you realized then that there were some wounded sisters out there who still have not healed, that we see in social media come off as Karens and Felicias and reality housewives. So during Women's History Month, I do wish that you could talk to the women to talk about the healing that we have to have in order to be the eaves of construction for this nation, because sometimes we're used as the poster girls to defray that notion or the advancement, because, as you said in your new book, A Politics of Love, a handbook for a new American revolution, there can be no revolution and victory when you have wounded soldiers. And if women are piggybacking off of the narrative of either party and they're wounded, then we really won't be free and have this free discourse. So thank you for joining us. In your book, you said, you kind of hinted to it, we the people, we the problem. You stated that for too many decades, Americans have been chronically distracted by less important things, not bothering to engage in serious self-examination. Material progress has become our false god. Can you expound on that little much? Because I said with the concerts and the football games and the Oscar ceremonies that we have these weapons of mass distraction. Expound on that a little bit more about us being distracted and somewhat illusional.
Martin Luther King, Marcia, said that our lives begin to end on the day we stop talking about the things that matter most. And you just referred to a culture in which we are inundated constantly, all day, every day, with ultimately unimportant things. Mm-hmm. And our economic system is predicated on our obsession with ultimately unimportant things. And I think many people are recognizing the high price we're paying for this. It's detrimental to our souls. It's detrimental to our mental health, our spiritual health, our emotional health, our psychological health, that so many of us are left in a state of constant grasping. Mm-hmm. It's a constant state of not having enough. And then the economic system adds to that by making it so difficult for so many people that people don't even have the bandwidth we need to be there for our spouses, to be there for our children, certainly to be there for our communities and for our country. Now, I think a mistake we make, though, Marcia, is if we think we have to heal before we can save our democracy. Mm-hmm. We have to do both at the same time. When people tell me how traumatized they are, I ask them, don't you think the people who walked across the bridge at Selma were traumatized? Mm-hmm. I think there's a way in which we all have to toughen up a little bit. Mm-hmm. I think there are a lot of hours in the day. I think that I think a lot of people are more interested now in spiritual practice, prayer, reflection, meditation. This is how we prepare our nervous systems for the task at hand. Mm-hmm. I always say pray in the morning, kick ass in the afternoon. So I think we have to, in a way, Marcia, coddle our neuroses and our wounds a little bit less right now. We're all wounded. Just kind of accept it. We're all wounded. And part of this is you go home to cry. You go home to cry a bit, and then you get back out there. And that's what our ancestors did. There are points in history where, we have to remember the people, whether they were abolitionists or women suffragists or early labor organizers or the civil rights movement, they weren't people without wounds. They weren't people without fears. They weren't people without deep concerns and trauma. But they did what history was calling them to do at a particular point. And I believe that we have to think of this in terms that big. History is calling us to turn some things around in ways that if they do not turn around, it is reasonable to assume we might not keep our democracy. And if they don't turn around on some levels, we could even lose the habitability of the planet.
No, I think you're making a larger point here, though. I don't think one, whether it's the woman or the man, one is more wounded than the other. I do think that there is a spiritual illness in this country and a lack of spiritual nourishment. And then I ask of you, Mrs. Williamson, how do you heal the divide? How do you find that which we have more in common than set us apart, where both political parties exploit that and make us think that we're each other's enemies and all they're doing is reducing us so they can magnify themselves?
Well, first of all, don't let them determine your conversation. It is an artificially created divide. The left is trained to think the right is the problem. The right is trained to think the left is the problem. But really, it's one of those don't look up type things. The real dichotomy in this country is not between left and right. That's artificial. It's between the powerful and the powerless. It's between those who have capital and access to more capital versus those who are just struggling to survive. I thought it was really interesting when you saw how many Trump supporters were on the UAW picket line. And this is why this is a very fertile moment, I think, because people on both left and right are beginning to recognize that, as you said, the corporate state, the short-term profit maximization for these corporate entities is who's messing with you or exploiting you, whether you're on the left or the right.
This is Your Voice, Your Future. Marcia Dyson and Marianne Williamson are our guests. And don't go away. It's a very provocative and insightful discussion. And more power to women. I'm Armstrong Williams. We'll be back.
As a home buyer, you need a lender who cares about your home ownership dreams. United Security Financial has been helping families secure their dream homes for 30 years. We're a national fair practice lender that provides affordable mortgages and low down payment programs to eligible home buyers. To learn how United Security Financial can help you secure your dream home, call 1-800-373-4186.
Marcia Dyson, in the spirit of Women's History Month, can you share how the Women's Global Initiatives is working to highlight and address the current challenges faced by women around the world, and what specific achievements or advancements are you most proud of in your work towards this equality?
Well, the world is ran by the economy and the consumerism and the productivity of women entrepreneurs, despite what people may think. Even if they're in one of the countries on the continent of Africa, there's the merchant women, the women who deal in textiles that end up on the New York Fashion Week, that they have in September and all over the world. And additionally, when we think about women in trade, when women are not only at the head of the household and they're businesswomen, they leave a legacy for their children, which is often not possible if they are just only employed. And one of the things that we want to do, and the reason why we established a trade bureau, and I'm not talking about selling cupcakes, we want to do what the big boys do. So if there needed to be a supplier for aviation, all it is trying to find the source. It's supply and demand. And we're trying to get women to do, as Dr. King has said about the social activism during the civil rights movement, is to get away from your shores of familiarity. And when you have the mammoth of the Export-Import Bank of the United States States of America wanting women to be more engaged and to get part of that $100 billion, which is in their coffers, which might end in 2026. I wanted to take that mantle on and find women anywhere who could be able to deepen and broaden their entrepreneurship to be able to manufacture in this country, wanted to bring back manufacturing, which people have not really talked about. I've not heard that on this campaign, because many of the women who are entrepreneurs have to get their sources from China, or their manufacturing from China. We want to be able to bring that back under women entrepreneurship, whether it's in agribusiness, converting regular automobiles to EV vehicles. We can do that. We have women who have done that. We also have one woman who was actually able to go over to cross the waters to the country of Ethiopia and able to create feed 600,000 people, create 20,000 jobs, buy a hotel, which would then afford her the wealth to come back to America and engage in women who want to deal in real estate development. All of the places that I go in America, we see this real estate development, but these women are purposeful in wanting to develop the communities that have been rotten away and eaten at its core by the lack of governance or lack of other entities coming in and taking over their cities.
So, Mayor Williamson, as we observe Women's History Month and your campaign for the Democratic nomination for President of the United States, how do you plan to incorporate your feel about women? I don't think women are as, I just think women, maybe I'm out of it, I think they do better than most people in this country. I don't see the lack of opportunity and the fact that you compete well on the global stage everywhere, but I understand why you'd want that to be your part of your platform, but I don't think you're running for president because you want to be the first woman president. I think you're running for president because you're the best person at this moment, you believe, to run and change this country where it works for everyday Americans.
Yes, but I do believe that, listen, no matter who we are, we bring our experience with us. And my experience is that I'm a woman. And being a woman, I think I do have concern about the children, particularly, that I bring to the table that is different than most men. Our systems were created before women had any kind of voice in the public sphere, and we do have that voice now. We bring things with us, like what Marcia was just saying. Marcia, the stuff you were just saying, I found so exciting while you were talking. And all of the women who were experiencing what Marcia was just saying, and Marcia even talking about it, comes from something we bring with us, which is called sisterhood. And that's the desire to uplift other women. I think I do, as a presidential candidate, bring with me as Marcia so demonstrates, and as she has demonstrated in my own life, by the way, a real desire to proactively be there to support other women. One of the first things I would do is to call the archivist and demand that the ERA be published. You know, you mentioned a couple of minutes ago that women don't lack opportunity, but absolutely women in the United States, our pay is less on average than the man gets for the same job, and that could be fixed by the ERA. So I do think that for myself, what I would bring to the job is in large part informed by the fact that I care about other women and that I care about children in a way that I don't think I would necessarily carry within me where I'm at.
Mm-hmm. And to your point, Marilyn, and when Marianne, when we also add race to it, there was two women who created this fund called the Fearless Fund, and they had $100 million at their disposal, specifically targeted to the underserved community of Black women. And one non-Black gentleman thought that it was itself a racist act, took it to court, and got it defunded. Now, these were women who were collecting the funds to help women lift themselves up, their families, and their community, and that was knocked down. They are still fighting that fight. So for us as women, Marianne, as you have said, we are still behind the 8 ball. We have few women in the C-suite. Women
that's just one example.
Well, no, but that's a big example when you're talking about $100 million at the disposal. But the other thing is, too, when we even look at the women who are owners of sports, and we look at so many areas, yes, we have a disposable income. That's like the African American community has a disposable income that could rival the ninth nation in the world, right? But then one thing that I would like...
But it's how you choose to spend that.
No, but okay, but it's also, remember, you're assuming that in the Black community, which we have a lot of wealth literacy programs that have to go on, because there was a big divide between the 60s and us who had to make it through poverty, had our families teaching us things. A whole different dynamics happened. I think by
But some would say they're worse off today by the Great Society program.
But some way, given that we have we are economically sound, but we're morally sometimes corrupt as well. And that's something that Marianne alluded to a little bit, fact, and you did too. Dr. King said that he was afraid that we would co-opt ourselves, that integrate ourselves out of our that we would integrate ourselves out of power. And first I thought that power was economic power, but now I see that because of segregation, remember segregation, we had to shop with one another, we had our stores, and then as soon as we got liberated, past Jim Crow laws, then we just used our disposable income with other entities. But I'm not saying that that's their own thing, but I also see an erosion of this spiritual and moral power that we have as American citizens. I remember that you was talking on the last show about our national anthem and this pride that we should have, right? But we are in moral decay, and that we need to have come to whomever moment to see that how is this impacting our spiritual lives, our political lives, so that we are talked to, preached to, rather than spoken to.
But Marianne, can't any of us talk about what's missing in our lives, what we don't have, and how we were maligned here, and what history has done? But do we ever really take time to think about how far we've come and what we have to celebrate, and how everybody can talk about their challenges and how somehow or other the system is not favorable to them? But as a collective, we can take the pain, and we can also take the things that we've gained and build a better country for the future. Everything is not about what we should have, could have, would have had. It's what we have and what we can build with what we have now.
I think it's a both and. I think that there's some people in America that only want to talk about what's wrong and have no deeper appreciation for the, as you were saying, for the gains that have been made. And I think it's important that we hold that. But we have to remember that there are many people who only want to talk about what we've done right and are in denial about terrible systemic injustices that exist today and that existed in the past. I think we need to do both. I think it's a big both and. You know, Marcia and I can tell you, it's not just race, it's also misogyny. And yes, it is, Armstrong. I'll tell you something. I've had a career for 40 years. I've been a writer. I've written quite a few books. I'm a lecturer. I'm a speaker, teacher. I never felt in my career in any way limited by my sex. I never felt that as a woman I had less opportunity or anything along that line.
You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna stop you there because we have 20 seconds. I wanna tell you, for me, it's been an honor to have you on. I've been a big admirer of yours. I was thrilled when they finally said you were a book for the show. I wish you well in your presidential race. It's just another chapter of what you can become if you just have the belief and the backbone to just do it. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Marcia. Your voice, your future. I'm Armstrong Williams.